Well, we knew the threat was there, and now it's being carried out. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has now filed a motion to hold former President Trump in contempt of court, claiming he violated the gag order from the judge imposed on him by publishing 3 social media posts relating to 2 known witnesses in his criminal trial here in New York, Michael Cohen and the sex film worker Stormy Daniels. Bragg is urging Manhattan Judge Merchan to also warn Trump that future violations of the gag order can be punished not only with additional fines, but also with the term of incarceration of up to 30 days. And it's Tuesday, day 2 of the trial. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Emily Campagno. Also joining us today, Fox and Friends Weekend host and co-host of I Love It From the Kitchen Table podcast with her hubs, Sean Duffy. Rachel Campos Duffy is here, and Fox News contributor, board-certified physician, and author of the new hit book, Love Mom, Dr. Nicole Saphier. And host of the Ben Ferguson podcast and co-host of Verdict, with Ted Cruz podcast, Ben Ferguson himself. All great stuff you got to put in your life there. Let's go straight to Eric Shawn, live outside the New York State Supreme Court, with more on the Trump jury selection process, which they weren't very successful yesterday. Looked at 96 people and kicked out more than 50, Eric.
Yeah, they did, Harris. More than half kicked out yesterday. The process ongoing right now. The lawyers questioning the potential jurors as they sit in the jury box, and doesn't seem like it's going any better than it did yesterday. This as we find out that Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg wants to hold the former president in contempt of court. He has filed a motion that actually could seek the president going behind bars if he continues and not cut it out. Bragg's motion to the court asking that the president be held in contempt centers on 3 social media posts that the former president made recently. The prosecutor says they are violations of Judge Juan Merchan's gag orders. Bragg's office is demanding that Trump be fined $1,000 for each of those postings, where he attacked Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen on True Social last week. In one of them, he called them, quote, 2 sleazebags who have, with their lies and misrepresentations, cost our country dearly. In its motion, prosecutors say, quote, this court should warn defendant that future violations of the court's restrictions on his extrajudicial statements can be punished not only with additional fines, but also with a term of incarceration of up to 30 days.
We have a Trump-hating judge. We have a judge who shouldn't be on this case. He's totally conflicted, but this is a trial that should never happen.
So far today, at least 14 potential jurors have been excused. 6 said they could not fairly and impartially judge the former president. One man who was originally from Texas said he could not be fair because they have lots of Republican friends. A woman said Trump, though, is being treated fairly, and she told the court that no one is above the law. An excused juror told Fox News this morning that she thinks the opinion among the jurors are fairly split about the president. She said she was surprised about that, considering this is Democratic Manhattan. 29-year-old Karen McGee told us that, as far as she is concerned, she is not a fan of the former president, and she was excused because of a work conflict. Harris, back to you.
Wow, that's a lot of information from someone who went through the process of jury selection. We don't usually get the kind of detail of you surveyed the room and could tell us who supported whom. Wow. Eric Shawn, thank you. Great reporting. So, Emily, Karen McGee, 29 years old, she's off the list. Some 50-plus other people, 14 today, too, can't be impartial, although she decided that it was because of her work commitments. But it is interesting how many people are saying they can't be impartial. That's not shocking to you, though. It's New York.
Right. And look, I live here, too, which is why I also would have difficulty being impartial, not because I support Trump, but because this entire thing is so absurd and any normal American could see right through that immediately. I will say that this harkens back for me, the Boston Marathon, Joker Tsarnaev, that trial, where that was the largest pool in history. And upon motion to move the venue, right, the defense was arguing there's no way that this person is going to get a fair trial here. The judge responded, well, if he's not going to get a fair trial here, he will not get a fair trial anywhere. The whole point was that when the pool is large enough, when enough Americans will go through that rigorous process that this judge has said is the most thorough questionnaire he's ever seen, then they have faith in that process that it will spit out at the other end a small group of impartial Americans dedicated to doing their job. I have to say, 2 quick points. Number one, that the reason it's now bordering on incarceration is because the prosecution is arguing that this rises to a criminal contempt level, that Trump will not, they feel, stop violating the gag order, in their words, unless he's incarcerated and not just fined. And then a quick thought on missing his son's high school graduation. That is a punitive decision if the judge indeed goes through with that. I have been at a million scheduling hearings where criminal and civil, where many things come into play and the judge acquiesces, including letting prisoners out from incarceration to attend things like funerals and the like. So if he doesn't let him attend his kid's high school graduation, that is punitive before any type of conviction. It has no place here in Manhattan.
So, Ben, I'm sure you're seeing some of the social media that many of us are seeing on that particular issue about Barron, his son's graduation. Would Trump tempt this judge and just say, do what you got to do, I'm going?
Possibly. But this whole thing, if you're walking in that courtroom and you're Donald Trump and you look at the facts, you're in a place where basically 90% of the people in the jury pool voted against you. You have a judge that's given donations to Democrats whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris's 2020 campaign. And you also have Bragg, who's raised over $800,000, saying, if you go with me, I'm going after Donald Trump. So if you walked into that room and it's stacked this far against you from the very beginning, I think there's a certain point where you're like, all right, screw all of y'all. If you're going to do it this way, I'm going to go to my son's graduation. And if you're going to lock me up for that, then go ahead and do it. Because I do think it's totally insane we're even having this conversation. But it also tells you just how much they're going after him for political reasons. And I think that the highlight for me, the part that makes me the most angry, it's not anything I just told you. It's the fact that the president, Joe Biden, is in Pennsylvania raising money right now while they've tied up Donald Trump in court yet again. That is election interference.
Doctor?
You know, Harris, to Ben's point, the optics of this are really terrible. And I'm specifically talking on the gag order. I mean, it is the most un-American thing I have seen. It is unilateral silencing of former President Trump, when on the flip side, you have the judge's daughter, who is a high-level executive of a digital media company that has taken tens of millions of dollars, not just from Kamala Harris's campaign, Adam Schiff, many other Democrats, and that is how she gets her bread and butter. So you're silencing Donald Trump on the family of the judge and the DA, but you are not silencing the family on the former president himself. I mean, this is very un-American, and if you cannot acknowledge the implicit bias, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I mean, you're not paying attention.
I want to get to this before I come to you, Rachel. The Fox News legal editor, Carrie Kupaker-Bond, about the gag order on the Faulkner Focus yesterday. Let's watch.
And yet no gag order when it comes to Michael Cohen, but one for Donald Trump. And the reason that's especially important in this situation is because Michael Cohen can go on TV, he can do media interviews, he can say whatever he wants without consequence because he's not under penalty of perjury, something that he would well know, having been convicted of that before. And so, so that's problem number one. Number two is, my understanding is, as we speak, prosecutors are currently trying to get the judge to hold Trump in contempt for violating his gag order. That gag order is only applicable to, or it's applicable rather, to the witnesses. So he can talk about the judge and he can talk about Bragg, but not the witnesses. But to your point, Harris, when the star witness, the case that is, the entire case hinging upon this one person, is a known liar, that makes it pretty frustrating for a defendant not to be able to talk about.
She predicted it, and it happened less than 24 hours later. She saw this coming. Trump is in a box, and I wonder if Americans realize what's happening. How would you describe it?
Well, I definitely think they do. And really quick, to your point, Ben, about election interference.
Yeah.
They're trying to put Donald Trump at the same speed as Joe Biden, right?
Correct.
They want to tie him up in court. They want to make sure he's, he can't do rallies until 9 o'clock at night because he's got to be in court all day. They're trying to demoralize him by saying you can't go to your child's graduation, treating him like he's, a criminal. All of these things are so unfair. And to your point, I do think the American people notice. I do think the American people go, this isn't the country that I grew up in. In fact, this feels super communist. And when Donald Trump brings up the point about communism, he's right. You talk about the jury. Put in a Hispanic who's lived in one of those kind of countries, and they'll probably vote in favor of, Donald Trump and how absolutely unjust this is. This is absolutely unbelievable. Doesn't feel like America. And I think the American people are noticing, maybe not the people in Manhattan, but the people who are voting see this for what it is.
Well, you heard that one prospective juror that they cut because she said she had a conflict with her job, but also couldn't be impartial, that it was split inside that processing room for prospective jurors, that some were for staying and thought that they could be fair, and more than half were saying, no, we don't think we can be fair. I mean, it's to your point. They all have life histories.
Yeah, exactly.
We may not know the details, but something's telling those people, yeah, you can exit stage left.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.